this was a Belichickian schemed kind of win. We'll win. The Patriots were always under Belichick. We'll win as long as we do these things. We can
100%.
win this game, and they did it.
We talked about it, myself and Taylor, on Thursday's live Patriots Daily, where we kind of did how the Patriots can win this game, right? Because the idea behind it was any given Sunday, a team can beat another team. And like you mentioned, you have to do X, Y, and Z in order to get it done. And it was basically run the hell out of the football, control the line of scrimmage, stop the Bengals' big three, which they were able to because T. Higgins was obviously out of the game, and then Jamar Chase was limited with the contract stuff. And they got it done, and they played smart football on offense. They didn't turn the ball over. They just pounded the rock with Ramondre. And for the most part, Jacoby Brissett made the right plays. And, I'm sure we'll talk about all of it more in depth, but there was the throw to Hunter Henry that got broken up. That was a lucky one, and that could have changed things because they wouldn't have gotten points down there in the red zone. But it didn't. It wasn't intercepted, and that's what we have to work off of. And so it was a gutsy win. It was a statement win, I think.
Let's talk about the guy who runs the program, Jerod Mayo, debut as a head coach. Your thoughts on what you saw from him as a coach and also the locker room and the buy-in level and what the guys had to say about him.
So, a couple things. I just in general, I didn't know what to expect out of these Patriots. New head coach, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, new special teams coordinator. What I did know of what I saw on the field, I thought that Jerod ran a really good camp that would have the Patriots physically prepared for this game. I think that obviously showed up and might have been the reason for their victory in this game over, a Bengals team, which, I don't know, let's just call it, they're a little soft, and Jamar Chase has barely practiced, and T. Higgins was out and all that stuff. So I definitely was confident that the Patriots would be physically prepared. I figured they would tackle well. Who knows how they would block, whether they would hold up in the running game. But, I thought they'd be physically ready and probably ready to go the distance more than the Bengals, which I think played out.
The new era, as we've talked about in New England, is really finally here. What Jerod Mayo did Sunday is achieve two things that Bill Belichick could not over the last 4 years without Tom Brady. Win as a 2-score underdog and win a statement game on the road. Jerod did this in his NFL coaching debut. Now, this is not about Belichick, but if you are someone in that locker room listening to Mayo about this is how we're going to win, this is going to be the plan, it's going to work, we're building, but eventually over time this will work, and boom, like that happens right away, you are bought in. That's it. You went on the road as the biggest underdog in week one, something they themselves talked about in the locker room afterward, and won big time. Mayo had the locker room before. He's got it in his palm right now, which is the best thing you can have as a rookie head coach, not to mention everything else that lies ahead, which is probably still a difficult season. This makes it that much easier because he's got proof of concept. He's got buy-in. He's got something. Again, Bill Belichick could not do the last 4 years. 5 times he was an underdog by 8.5 points or more. 0-5.
The beginning of the Jerod Mayo era, what it looked like on the field from a coaching point of view. And I would say that the coaching staff passed their first test. Now, some of the stuff I'm going to say is a low bar to clear, but after one penalty on the opening kickoff, which you roll your eyes and you're like, oh boy, here we go again. Really clean operation. Guys got in and out of the huddle. They got the play calls in. You didn't seem to have too many procedural issues, anything, at least nothing that stuck out that you could see from the exterior. I'm sure they have things they want to clean up here or there, but even at times this summer, we saw they couldn't get lined up. They couldn't get substitutions done. A ton of penalties in joint practices and preseason games, but it felt like the whole operation itself went smoothly. And I don't know, maybe I'm not giving them enough credit, or I wasn't giving them enough credit going in. But Taylor, I feel like they definitely checked that box, and that was encouraging for me to see.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I wanted to see from them was that discipline and playing clean football, and I emphasize that. We know there's going to be issues. We didn't think the offense was going to be even close to perfect. I think we expected the defense to be good. The special teams we were hoping would be decent, and they ended up making an impact play, which was awesome. Jeremy Springer era starting off on a great foot. But I mentioned the penalties, especially for the offense. There were definitely some penalties that could get cleared up, but the offense had the Vidarian low false start, which honestly I didn't give him a lot of crap for because he came off the bench. The crowd was roaring by the time he got in there. So I was like, you know what? As long as this
mid-drive too, wasn't it?
Right.
It was, yeah.
If that's the worst mistake, like you take that.
Exactly. And then David Andrews, a legal man downfield, where he kind of joked about it. I think he was kind of like, I didn't even realize I was downfield. And then there was one more. You remember the third offensive penalty? Sorry, I can't remember. But if anybody remembers, let me know. But
the fact we can't remember is kind of the point. It wasn't that consequential.
Because those Chooks penalties, I don't think I'll forget those for the rest of my life. So the fact that
I don't think anybody will let me forget them for the rest of my life. Every time he does anything, I get tweets about it now.
So that was a little bit more under control. I thought the turnovers, now obviously they got lucky. Ramondre Stevenson fumbled, almost had a crippling sense of deja vu from that. Jacoby Brissett making, a not wise decision to try to chuck it up to Hunter Henry off his back foot. Things you got to clean up for sure, and I'm sure we'll get into Jacoby Brissett, but I think this was a great way to start off. Obviously, they won. Plenty to clean up once again, but I really liked what I saw from them for the most part, especially from a discipline and clean football perspective.
The Patriots go in there, and they win the football game, and look, it was eerily reminiscent of a Bill Belichick coach team, even though Bill is no longer here. And I'm not talking about the most recent version of Bill Belichick we saw because they were a hot mess those last few years. And that's why he, in part, is no longer here. It was fundamentally sound. Do not beat yourself. Again, they used to say it all the time, Belichick, you teach them how not to lose before you worry about how to win. They did that yesterday. They didn't turn the ball over. They did turn over the Bengals. The Bengals gave them some gifts, but it was one of those games where I was like, man, for the first time in at least a couple of years, I felt like I watched a competently coached, well-organized football team. And I don't know if this is something that continues to carry on or if they found the right opponent in the right week with the Bengals. But, Will, it was encouraging. It was interesting to sort of contrast how the game went and why it was great. But then you can, to get that first win under Mayo, but you can also see, like, this is not a sustainable way to play offense, the way they did.
Yeah, the one thing I think I hit on like 900 times on Friday's pod was who's Jerod Mayo and what kind of coach team is this going to be? And I think that the two biggest things for the Patriots again this season, we talked so much about this in our season preview. Who's the coach? What do the young players look like? Obviously, there's foundational pieces. Gonzalez was good. I thought Polk had some nice moment. Ramondre is a guy they extended, and it was awesome. He's always going to be he's a bruising back. We'll see kind of obviously how he ages, but those guys, those core group, and then who's the coach, and then obviously who's Drake Maye. The Patriots, look, they have a Seattle team coming cross country, next week.
For a 1:00 game.
And Seattle had some issues. I know they won the game on Sunday, but Denver should have been up big time early. And 1:00, East Coast travel coming off that an emotional kind of home win. Oh, it's the Patriots. It's 1 week. I don't know. I don't know why you don't think the Patriots couldn't flirt with the idea of being 2-0. I don't know if they will, but I think you could flirt with it. So I think they were one of the most impressive teams yesterday, knowing there was a lot of questions about Jerod Mayo, and it's just one game. But I think if you're a Patriots fan, you say, you know what, we're going to go in every game, and we're going to be damn hard to beat. And I think that's the goal for this season.
So to keep saying this stuff about Mayo now definitely means that kind of belief level is super high in terms of, and the buy-in is really high from those guys there. I think that's evident. I think you're going to see it in almost every comment that comes out of there.
Yeah, and I think everybody, all the players saying that, we love Jerod and he's our guy. And you see the Gatorade bath that we talked about, and Keon mentioned it, but talking about going on Devon Godshaw's podcast, and they're going to run through a brick wall for that guy. So when Mayo speaks, these guys are going to listen, right? And so it felt like the Patriot way, for lack of a better term, that that Bill Belichick was preaching here for so long, it just kind of felt like it run its course last year. And, there was mistakes all over special teams, and there was the interception from Mac Jones and stuff like that. And it's like now they listen to Jerod Mayo, and they want to win, and they want to play hard for Jerod Mayo because he's been through it and he understands what they've been through. Like you talk about, Mayo mentioned the two-a-day stuff and how he was able to talk to Bill Belichick, and they would not do 2-a-days because Mayo explained that this is what the players want and things like that. And so Mayo gets it from their perspective. So I think they want to play that much harder for him. Now, you mentioned it too. There's rah-rah guys, and there's I think of Brandon Staley from the Chargers, who early on looked pretty good. We're going for it on 4th down. I trust my guys. These are my guys, blah, blah, blah. And it just takes it runs its course. Jason Garrett he was Mr. Clap Your Hands, and he gave it his all to make sure that everybody knew that he thought the Dallas Cowboys were the best football team on the field. But at the end of the day, it ran its course there too. And so, look, for now, they're 1-0. They want to play hard for Mayo. They shower him in Gatorade. They love him. They're on the same level as far as respect-wise. But at the end of the day, you need to keep winning football games in order for that to matter, because otherwise, ultimately, at the end of the, if they do start to lose games, it's going to look a whole lot different.
I don't know. It's hard to describe it, Nick, but there was definitely a different vibe, like almost like a heaviness had been lifted. And I do think that's a credit to Mayo. And I think at least for 1 week, it was very real on Sunday.
I remember saying when people were looking at Belichick and Mayo, and it was, oh, you're going to have another Belichick guy. He's going to be just like Belichick. And I made a note at the time on my podcast, and I think I made it on this podcast as well. And the point was, well, Mayo also understood what Belichick might not have gotten right. And he's in the locker room, and he's talking to these guys. He had a great relationship with a lot of players on the team. And I'm sure during those conversations, Mayo picked up that some of them were frustrated. Some of them had had enough of the Belichick method. And it's not to say that Belichick can't work out next year if he comes back to the league. And it's not to say that Mayo has everything figured out. As Greg just said, it's been 1 week. But it's the idea of, Mayo taking notes and learning, okay, this is what works. This is what I can bring to the table, which was, a lot of the principles football-wise. Mayo stands, firm with Belichick, really hip to hip, shoulder to shoulder. But he's watching this all play out in the locker room, and he's probably saying to himself, this isn't the way, Bill. Like, just not in 2023. This, like, we can do a better job of reaching these players. With all that said, it wouldn't mean anything if we didn't see things play out the way they played out on Sunday. And I thought Mayo had a great day on Sunday.
I just thought Mayo had them ready to go, like, as a whole, and that's credit to him. We talked so much about in the summer how hard they really pushed them, right? Lots of padded practices. Later in the day, it was hotter. Live tackling, they only missed 3 tackles, where Cincinnati missed, I think it was like 12, 13. We heard Zach Taylor say a lot how bad that cost them the game.
It was 10 on Ramondre alone. So
yeah, so they were ready to go in that area. I thought they were well coached. Elsewhere, it helped Alex Van Pelt was familiar going against Cincinnati. Seemed like they had a really good game plan. They stuck to, they executed. We even heard, Mayo told us yesterday the guys were going down the sideline in the fourth quarter saying, take him to the hill, right? Because they'd end every practice on the conditioning hill. So those guys were pumped up. They were ready to go. And it sounds small, but those things really matter, like in these early games where you could see Cincinnati was a team that didn't play their guys a lot in the preseason. And they kind of looked like that. And, the Patriots, they played their guys in the preseason. They had those long training camp practices, and they were ready to go. And it makes a difference in a game like this.
This is what Mayo talked about. Righting the ship. It happened. Got 16 more to go. And David Andrews was talking like, yeah, I think so, was his answer when I asked, is this healing in any kind of way? For a guy who not only was just at the literal center of all the dysfunction, but having to talk to us at the media every single game last year as they go 4-13. So I highlight them because they had to go through the slog, which made this all the sweeter, right? All the bitterness of the last 2 years. But there's also something to be said for just the damn noise I heard waiting outside the locker room before I got in. They do the whole, oh yeah, right, that you've heard and maybe even seen on social media since. That was the loudest noise I've heard out of a locker room in I don't know how long. And when I got inside, it was maybe the happiest since 2018, which by now, what are we, like 7 minutes in? You're probably thinking like, did you leave the stadium, Callahan, with a bag of cash to just kind of exaggerate all of this stuff? No, this is what it felt like in the moment. This was a moment that can stand on its own. Even if they go 1-16, you'll have this that you could hold on to. It was both the start of something new in a moment unto itself, because that's what they felt in there. And so there were good locker rooms, don't get me wrong, in 2021, especially that road win in Buffalo. But it was like a weight lifted. It was a joy rediscovered. It was validation. It was, okay, we might be able to do this. And who knows, again, how far they take it forward.
Support us and sign up at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS or download the app today and use code CLNS at prizepicks.com/CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5.